Welcome to the Academic Woman Amplified podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Mazak, tenured full professor, mom of three, and firm believer that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hey everyone, at the time of this recording, yesterday, the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a global pandemic. This has had a huge effect on the academic community in so many ways. One of them is canceling travel. Another one is universities telling everyone that they need to put all their classes online for the next 3 weeks or for the foreseeable future. So many things have made this particular moment in academia a really stressful one. And so I wanted to come to you with my very first bonus episode of the Academic Woman Amplified podcast. And this episode is a Facebook Live that I did. And so it might sound a little different from other episodes. And you'll hear me say hello to a couple of people during the episode. That's because it's a Facebook Live. I hope that this episode gives you some concrete ways to continue your writing practice through these next very difficult weeks and months, and to find the bright side and the advantage to where we are right now, and how you can use it to really learn about yourself and take care of your career. Hey everyone, it's Kathy Mazak, and I wanted to come to you live today to talk about the minimum viable semester. So I learned about the minimum viable semester when I had to finish the academic year after my university in Puerto Rico had a devastating hurricane. So in 2017, in kind of mid-late September, we had Hurricane Maria devastate Puerto Rico, and that really screwed up our academic year. So what I learned that year, and I've blogged about this in different places, but one of the things I've learned was how to use the minimum viable product approach to apply it to the semester and be able to get through the semester in a way that is empathetic towards your students and is also graceful towards yourself. So I want to talk about that today because I know that is on the mind of so many of us as universities are closing. How are we going to finish our semester? You know, you had goals, right? You were going to get writing done. You had courses to teach. There's so many things that were part of your plan that now your plan is going to have to shift. And again, like I can't help but be reminded of living through Maria. And, you know, one day we were like, maybe it'll be fine and it won't be that bad. And the next day we were in a complete media blackout for 2 weeks. And in our case, we were stuck in our home, in our property for a week. We couldn't get out. So we were fine, but we had to cut down like a gazillion trees to be able to get out of our property. So during Maria, we were out. The university was off for 4 weeks. And then even when we came back on, like everything had changed in a big way. So we really had to completely rethink the way we were delivering material and really like how we were supporting students and supporting each other during that time. So I really have seen so many parallels between what's happening right now and what happened in Puerto Rico during Maria. And I wanted to just walk you through a bunch of things that I hope will be helpful for you right now. So the main topic here is we need to shift the way we have been thinking about the semester, and it is time to adopt a minimum viable semester plan. So what does that mean? In the world of business and product development, there is a thing called the minimum viable product. And that is like the most simple, minimally done version of your product. And a lot of times people use this at the beginning of when they're launching a product. They launch the minimum viable product, people like it, and then they further develop the product. We're going to do the opposite this semester. We've already launched our semester. We've said on the syllabus, it's going to look like this. We've said to the universe, I'm going to publish these things this semester, or I'm going to participate in these conferences. And now, because of what's happening with the coronavirus pandemic, we have to kind of revert almost back to, or drastically reduce what we thought we were going to be able to do. So I'm going to start with two major kind of underlying themes that I want you to keep in mind as you're developing your minimum viable semester. And that is empathy for your students and grace for yourself. Okay. So what that means is this is horrible for you. And it's also horrible for students. So anything with uncertainty, drastic changes, that's horrible for everyone in your community. So as you're developing what you're going to do with your courses, what you're going to do with the students you're supervising, what you're going to do with your own, like, for example, many of us write and publish and present with our students. And so much of that has been derailed by conference cancellations and everything. So I want you to think two things: empathy for your students, grace for yourself. So empathy for them because they're also going through a lot of things. So we need to design what we're going to do next with empathy for students. And we also need to design what we're going to do next with grace for ourselves. You are under a lot of stress. You are looking at potentially delivering the rest of a semester or maybe the next month potentially with other family members at home. So usually maybe you can, your kids are at school or daycare, or your husband's at work or your wife's at work. And then you go to work and then you don't worry about them for 8 hours and then you come home, right? Well, that's not going to happen. And if everybody gets sent home, that means all of a sudden we're trying to deliver a semester with all these other people around, right? From our living room or from our home office, if we're lucky enough to have one. So you need to treat that with grace to yourself. It's going to be stressful. It's not ideal. We need to work through grace and self-forgiveness. All right. The third thing I'm going to say that's going to kind of underline everything, and then I'm going to get into like the real, like not hard hitting, but super concrete things I want you to think about adopting. I'm going to talk about some tools that you could use for online teaching and ways. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about that in a second, but one more thing first, which is I want you to document your efforts. So what we're doing this semester, what it looks like right now for academics is like our results, right, of the semester were going to be, oh, I presented this paper at this giant conference. That is no longer going to be one of the results that you can list on your CV or in your promotion materials or just in terms of however you check in with or report, depending on where you are in your career, with your university, your accomplishments, right? So as we are kind of like removing things from the CV, which I do think that we need to, even if you don't actually go and give the paper, it should be put on, that the paper has been accepted. And I think that's generally the advice that people are giving right now. So that kind of work is being taken away, but there's a bunch more work that you're doing. And sometimes that work is invisible. So this idea of like, guess what? Now you have to do all your classes online. There's a lot of labor involved in that could become invisible. So I don't want that to happen. I want you to document that. So people have been saying that around the internet. This is not like my own idea, but here's what I'm going to tell you in terms of how to document it. So just super simple, because remember, minimum viable product, super simple. You're just going to start a document in your favorite word processing software that is going to be titled Additional Labor During Pandemic. And you're going to just make a running list. Doesn't have to be in wording that you can put on your CV. It doesn't have to be in wording that you could copy paste and send in a letter to your dean. It just has to be a running document of stuff you're doing that you weren't doing before. That is labor. Things like redesigned 3 courses to be delivered online, held an online support group for student teachers who suddenly lost their placements, or, like what all these different things that you could be doing that you're probably already doing to support your university community, to support your local community. You need to be keeping just a very basic running bulleted list of all of that stuff. Okay. So empathy for your students, grace for yourself, document your efforts. Those are the 3 principles of what I'm going to talk about. Now I'm going to talk about minimum viable semester planning. All right. So what I want to take out of your head right now is the idea that you can magically recreate online the semester that you were about to deliver in person. That is not what's going to happen. What needs to happen now is, like I said, minimum viable semester. And so that means we have to back way down on our goals. I love the book called Finish by John Acuff. It's a short read. I listened to it on Audible. He reads it himself. It was really great. And what he says is you need to half your goals or double the time it takes you to get there, because it is so, so, so important for our self-esteem and for momentum that we hit our goals. So now, because sands have shifted, it's time to back way down on your goals. Okay. So I was on Facebook this morning and one of my colleagues was writing oh, now there's a bunch of stuff off of my to-do list because I was going to be going to these big conferences. So I want you to take that as an opportunity. I want you to look for where is there opportunity in creating something different. So the big idea here is you will not recreate the semester you thought you were going to have from your house, from quarantine, online. You just won't. So you need to look through teaching, research, and service, as a way to organize it, and think about what each of your goals were. Maybe you wrote them down earlier this year in those 3 areas. And then I want you to rewrite your goals. I literally want you to get out a piece of paper, write down what you thought you were going to do this semester, and draw a line in the middle of the paper. And on the other side, rewrite that under the current circumstances, because you cannot, and your university cannot hold you to the same bar standard. They can't hold you to the same bar that they've been holding you to, because we are in a historical moment where we need to socially isolate, flatten the curve, and you have a part in that, right? So what you thought you were going to do and what you're going to do now is fundamentally different. Okay. So I want you to make a list of what you thought you were going to do, your goals. I was going to publish 3 papers this semester, and I was going to, graduate all of these students, or I was going to even just what your syllabus looks like now. It needs to be rewritten. Okay. The contract that we made with our students at the beginning of the semester cannot be the same contract that we have now. It can't be. And students are probably going, holy crap, how am I going to do all these things that I thought I was going to do during the semester now without ever seeing my professor in person? So you need to pull it way back. So I'm going to talk for a second. So what we're doing first is we're just taking our goals and we're rewriting them in light of current circumstances. So a few things to consider when you're rewriting your goals or when you're rethinking what you're going to do. I want you to think about, what is your situation really going to look like if you have to work from home? So if your university called off, but you're going to keep sending your kids to school because the kids' school hasn't been called off, that's one thing. If you're working from home and your spouse is suddenly at home, or anybody else that you live with is suddenly at home when they weren't before, that's also a difference. So all of those things are changes in the material situation in which you are living. And so you also need to change your goals correspondingly. You cannot, and I said this on a live video yesterday, you cannot sit down and work for 8 hours a day at your home. The same way that you go to campus and work for 8 hours a day. When you go to campus and work for 8 hours a day, built into that 8 hours is you walking to class, being interrupted by students, heating up your lunch, going to get some coffee, so what I'm trying to say is if you go to campus for 8 hours, it doesn't mean you're working for 8 hours. So at home, it doesn't need to be the same either. You can be more efficient in less time. And the advice I gave yesterday was to imagine like trying to put the bar at about 4 hours of work from home to start, and those 4 hours, if nobody else is home with you, that could be super easy. And you might be like, oh, I can do 6 hours or whatever. But once you got kids or other family members at home, it's going to be way, way harder. And that's why I say, can you find 4 hours in the waking hours of the day that you can do kind of like 4 power hours where you just really like concentrate on what you're going to do for an hour and then, like distract kids with a movie and then, kids are sleeping. I can do another hour. I'm talking from a parent's perspective, but however it applies to you, like just changing your expectations. All right. I also want to talk a little bit about writing and then teaching. So as for writing, I did a whole video about maintaining your writing practice through this. And again, the same advice. It's going to be lower the bar. See if you can get 1 to 2 hours once or twice a week of writing during your tiger time. And that's it. I would call maintaining a writing practice or maintaining at least an hour a week of writing, I would call that a super big win with the amount of brain space that this crisis is taking up right now. So super big win. I congratulate you. So like pull it way back. We're way, way, way lowering the bar. All right. So that's what I have to say about writing. You can see my other video. If you're on my page, you can scroll back to yesterday's video and see kind of more details about writing. I want to talk a bit about teaching because one of the things that derails our writing is when teaching takes over. And so the first thing I want to say about it is that if teaching takes over right now, so be it. Empathy for your students, grace for yourself, document what you're doing. So if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. And I would not get, again, grace for yourself, right? Don't feel guilty. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's like, this is what it has to be. It cannot be the same thing the semester cannot be the same semester that we thought it was going to be 3 weeks ago. All right. So it's a new day. It's minimum viable semester. All right. So minimum viable writing practice is 1 to 2 hours a week during your tiger time. That's what it is. And then minimum viable semester teaching looks like this. What I want you to do is I want you to look at your syllabus. And this is what I did after Maria. So after Maria, the students didn't have power at home. They didn't have internet. If they didn't have power, that means that it was hard to eat because you had to get ice if you wanted something, like to be cold. Like if you could, people were eating like crackers and tuna. Like it was hard to bathe because you didn't have water. You didn't know when you were going to have water. The water wasn't hot. There's a lot of things that made just daily life like super, super hard. So we had to take that into consideration when we were delivering courses to those students. We can't give the students this huge amount of online reading if they can't access the internet from their homes or they don't have power in their homes. And our library was out for a whole year. So we couldn't do that either. So I looked at my syllabus and I asked myself this question. And I specifically remember I was teaching research methods for master's students in our English education program. And I was like, what do I need to teach them? What do they need to be able to do and know in order to be able to say they took this course? So if I had fancy ideas of what was going to happen, they got super simplified, not dumbed down, right? But definitely like simplified in terms of like what I was asking them to do and when and where I was asking them to do it because they didn't have access to power. So I couldn't just say like, go online and find all of these things. We had to do that live together at the only time that they had power and internet, which was when they were with me on campus. So I eliminated assignments. I changed the way assignments got turned in. We did a lot more like in class. We're going to learn it, here together, and a lot less do this at home and then come, let's talk about it. So I want you to think about that for moving your classes online. What do they need to know to be able to say they took the course? What do they need to be able to do to say that they took the course, right? To meet the minimum requirements of the course. Because right now we are meeting minimum requirements. We don't have time to be fancy. We don't have time to create the most excellent online course experience. What we want is an online course experience for students that is empathetic towards them, that is graceful to yourself. That's what we want. So a little kind of more nitty-gritty things. If your university is not, if they don't have tools that they are training you to use in order to put your courses online, I'm going to suggest some very, very simple tools. Okay. So of course, everybody knows about Zoom, but you might not know that you can use Zoom to record a really nice quality talk over PowerPoint slides video, or a video like this that I'm doing right now. So you can use Zoom for that. You don't have to have anybody else on the call to record what you're doing, and then download that file. And then those files are like a reasonable size for uploading to a learning management system or whatever. So Zoom is one tool. If your university doesn't have access to Zoom or doesn't give you like access to Zoom, you can use a free Zoom account and your meetings can last up to 45 minutes. So if what you're doing is creating videos and then uploading them somewhere, you don't need anything except a free account. Also, you can hack your way around the free account, right? And have a 45-minute meeting or class discussion or something. Everybody logs out and logs back on. That kind of sucks. But also, if you wanted to upgrade your Zoom account, it's only $15 a month. And probably it would be worth it to spend $45 doing that for the next 3 months and then cancel. If you want a totally free way to do asynchronous, super easy recorded videos, there's a tool called Loom, Loom, which is a little like app that you get put in your browser. I'm looking at it right now. So it's a little app on your browser that will record your screen. And the reason it's so easy is that you can have your PowerPoint there, you can talk over your PowerPoint, and when you hit stop, Loom just gives you a URL, and you can send that URL to students in an email. So I'm thinking about like, what are some really, really, really simple tools? That's what I'm trying to talk to you about right now. So a very simple tool to create videos that are screen share, kind of talk through something that's on your screen, is through Loom. There's no downloading and uploading. It gives you a URL and you use that. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. I would use Zoom if you're ever going to use these videos again, like to keep for future semesters and that kind of thing. Zoom gives you a better product, but Loom is the easiest, like super accessible, easy, free, just send a link to somebody way to do it. Okay, so those are some simple tools. Another simple tool that there's a free version of is Slack. It's like a kind of group texting tool. So that's something that you could use for group discussions. Again, like trying to think of simple tools. That's one of them. And then of course, Google Docs, just sharing things in Google Docs, students submitting things via Google Docs. You don't have to have an LMS. And in fact, I always used an LMS, even for my in-person classes, because I would have a lot of online resources and stuff. But in my last 2 years, I went completely Google Drive. And so our university has, a Google Drive. All the students have access to Google Drive through their university email accounts. And I would use that instead of Moodle or any other LMS. I'm like, screw it. We're just doing this in a Google Drive. And so I would have a folder for readings, a folder for handouts, a folder for assignments. And if there were assignments that were kind of we could all share and see, then they could submit them to the folder. And if they were assignments that a paper that I was going to grade, they would create the document on their Google Drive and share it with me. So you can use Google Docs as a very simple LMS, actually. And if you did Loom videos, you could have just a Google Doc with the link to the video in a Google Doc. And You don't have to use an LMS. You could just use Google Suite. So again, I'm talking about minimum viable semester. That's like a minimum viable LMS. Just use Google Docs. So, okay, what else? So another thing too I want to say about teaching is empathy for your students, grace for yourself, make it easy for people, and do a couple of things. One is make your lessons templatized. And this is something I teach inside of my programs for writing and publishing more. I say like, oh, if you want to have more time to write, you need to make templates for everything that you do, like for your writing, but also for your teaching, for your emails, for everything needs to have a template. And so one of the things that I was really appreciative of is Lauren McLover Thompson posted in my I Should Be Writing group and around the internet in different places. Like she's been teaching online for a really long time. And she posted like, she's like, this is how I do it. There's a list of 7 things. Each lesson has 7 things in it. The first one is they read something or watch something. The second one is they do this. The third one is it's a checklist. It's the same for every single unit. And what I love about that is that it's predictable for the students. So they know exactly what they're getting into each lesson. They know how to do it. They get familiar with it. And it makes it so much easier for you to create things inside of like a prescribed container. And you create the container. You decide what that prescription looks like, what that template looks like. You create that, you decide what you like, and then you just are replicating it. And you take all of that mental energy of inventing the lesson. Like, I'm not inventing the lesson. I'm doing the lesson in a very predictable way every time. And that is super helpful during creation, but it's helpful for your students too, because they know what to expect. All right. So the other thing I want to say about teaching is think about the combination of asynchronous and synchronous methods of teaching online. If you want to create more time to write and you can let go of perfectionism and really do a minimum viable semester model, then if you did your lessons asynchronously, so that means that you record something and ask students to do something, they don't have to show up live, right? They can consume that recording or that material. And it doesn't have to be a recording either. It could be written out, whatever. They consume the lessons at whatever moment of the day. You release them, and then they have a certain amount of time to consume them. That can be good for you and your writing. If you get that done and you release perfectionism and you think minimum viable semester, then all of a sudden your days are not structured around being in classrooms at a certain time. And then you can use your tiger time to write. So let's imagine that you're home with all the little people and old people and spouse people in your home. And you're like, okay, everybody's here, but I still got to teach my classes. I got 4 workable hours a day. On Mondays, you could spend 2 of those hours creating the week's lesson, loading it up into Google Docs or whatever, or your LMS or whatever. You create the lesson. And then the rest of the week, you're just like monitoring what students have turned in or whatever you do. But you then all of a sudden, you don't have to be in the classroom Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1:00. If that's your tiger time, you could be writing. So it could, if you manage it, if you see the advantage of it and take advantage, then you could manage this to be a time that your writing gets done. Like it could be amazing. So think about using asynchronous methods. The other part about being asynchronous is that if your students have unreliable internet access or no internet access, it is better for them to consume materials asynchronously because they can do it whenever. So if they have to go someplace like to a friend's house in order to access the internet, then they can consume your asynchronous content whenever. They don't have to do it. You don't have to find internet access at a certain time of day every week. So that can be a thing that is really, really good for your students. In terms of if you do want to do synchronous stuff, and I think there should be opportunities for synchronous meetings. during this time. And that's because, our social networks as students are created in classrooms a lot of times. So we are pulling the rug out from under that for our students when we go all online, potentially. So one thing that you could do is you have your asynchronous content, and then you have 1/2 hour a week or 1 hour a week that you are available on Zoom or available, so you just open a Zoom room and you're sitting there for 45 minutes. And if people come in, they can ask you questions just exactly as if you were having office hours. So it's virtual office hours. And that can be a way for students to connect with you and feel reassured, especially students who didn't sign up right at the beginning of the semester. They did not sign up for an online course. So some of them might be floundering a bit. And you offer that, face-to-face time, even though it's virtually, at some pre-planned time during the week. So that's my advice about minimum viable semester. And I want to leave you with the thought that everything is gloom and doom. Absolutely. But also, there's opportunity here. There's opportunity for you to focus on your writing, which is something that you can control. Okay. I was on a live video yesterday and someone was watching me from Northern Italy, and she was like, I've just been so down because, we've been locked inside for 2 weeks and it's going to keep going and it's so awful. And then she had the realization during the video. She's like, but my writing is something I can control. And so, look for those places in your academic career that you can control and take action there. Use situations like this to build empathy, to practice grace with yourself, and document all of this labor along the way. So I'm just sending you all the internet hugs and hoping that you are having a wonderful day and have enjoyed this discussion of having a minimum viable semester. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time loving on yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join the over 7,000 academic women in the I Should Be Writing Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/groups/I Should Be Writing or search for I Should Be Writing inside your Facebook app. See you inside.